We've got the latest on the Ernest Jones trade saga and a big reason why the Rams are reluctant to give him a big contract. We got injury updates, roster moves, all that more coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit that like button, trying to get to 14K before opening night. We are Van Jefferson, Brandon Cook, Sammy Watkins, Trent Green, Gus Farrat days away from Rams opening night in Detroit. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade. Bleacher Report, 24/7 Sports, Dodgers Nation, SI, the Rams for Locked On. As always, I'm joined by the Rams pre, half, and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's entering his 9th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the people's champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, another jam-packed show. You got final roster cuts, some big decisions the Rams have to make, and the Ernest Jones saga continues. The latest on that. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, Travis, so let's dive right into it. So Sean McVay, he spoke to reporters after practice yesterday, and he was asked about the Ernest Jones, I'm calling it a saga at this point, and he said in his defense, he's right. He never requested trade. We had communication with his representation. There's been some dialogue with teams, and that's kind of where it's at. These are parts of the profession, and they're not fun parts, but they are real parts, and you have to acknowledge Ernest is a pro in every sense of the word. So, one, we have confirmation that they have spoke to other teams, and that's the biggest takeaway from this. And he also was not at practice yesterday either.
Yeah, look, this feels a lot like semantics at this point, that maybe he didn't ask for a trade. Maybe it was this, maybe it was that. The fact of the matter is, just cut to the meat of the issue. He wants more money, and they're not giving it to him. Whether or not he went to them and said, I want out, whether or not they said you can go look for one, whatever the actual phraseology that was used between Ernest Jones's representation and the Rams, doesn't really matter a whole lot to me. Maybe it matters to them as far as so they can stand in front and tell the truth and say he didn't actually ask. Okay, fine, whatever. The facts are the facts. He wants out or he wants money. Which of those two things are going to happen? Will either of those two things happen? That's the part that's interesting to me. What happens next is interesting to me. That he wasn't at practice is interesting to me. That these are the things that I think are super important with a relatively short amount of time before the beginning of the season. This whole, well, maybe he did this or he didn't do that, it really doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is he's unhappy and the Rams aren't giving him what he wants, and whether or not they move him, that's what happens next.
That's the big question. I think that there's a lot of things in play here. And the first is it money? Well, it's always about the money, right? And
always,
the Rams
always.
It's always about the money. And the Rams and Ernest Jones clearly are not even close on a contract because of the fact that back in the spring, they did have conversations. They did start negotiations. That seems to me that there was interest from the Rams and from Ernest Jones. He wants to stay on this team. Nothing that really stands out for me is the knee injury. Still dealing with a knee injury. Is it more serious than they think? We know they got burned in the past with Todd Gurley and a knee. Is that in play? And then also,
of course
how
it is.
high are they? Was that?
Of course, why? I mean, if you're like, there are two sides to all the stories, right? If I'm Ernest Jones, I want my money. I'm getting ready. I want security, and I get why he's asking, and I have no problem with him asking for what he's asking for. But the other side of the story is what the Rams are looking at, which is this is a defense that does not necessarily lean on that middle linebacker in a way that some other defenses might. To your point, this is somebody with a history of a knee injury. They don't really pay defensive players that haven't been named Aaron Donald or Jalen Ramsey, and I understand why they don't. And I get it from both sides, and they're going to have to come to some sort of an agreement or move on from this. But I understand why he's asking, and I understand why they're saying no. And that's why this is kind of a dangerous situation, because I get it from both sides, and that's where an impasse is, because I think both sides are right, but I don't know if there's a solution in the middle.
I think the best case scenario is that, of course, you could get a deal done, because I think Ernest Jones is someone that, look, Aaron Donald said after he retired, this is your defense now, right? There was the passing of the torch. You're the captain. You are the leader of this defense. And if they get a deal done, that'd be ideal. But I think that at this point, the best case scenario is him playing out this season, and then either you get a deal done then because he had a great year, the Rams had a great year, he looks like the leader for the future, and then you lock him up then, or you walk and you get a comp pick from that. But I think that it'd be difficult to see this defense. And yes, with Chris Shula's defense, heavy on safety. And the safety is going to play linebacker-like situations in the box. So it's a little unique in that standpoint. But still, to think that this team rebounds from losing Aaron Donald, the best defensive player to ever play for this organization, and Ernest Jones, who was right behind him in the same offseason with a new defensive coordinator, and somehow, some way, they're going to be a Super Bowl caliber defense. It's
Big
tough
ask
to envision that. I have to admit that. And I think that when you look at the drop-off from Aaron Donald to Kobe Turner, yes, Aaron Donald is the GOAT, man. It's Bruce Banner in football cleats. No one's replacing that. But the drop-off from Aaron Donald to Kobe Turner compared to Ernest Jones to Christian Roseboom, I think that drop-off is more significant from Christian Roseboom than Aaron Donald to Kobe Turner.
I do too. I want to go back to what you said at the beginning, and I think you're right, and I'm hopeful that this is where it lands, which is we can't come to an agreement on a new deal. We don't have a trade partner that makes sense for the Rams, that he needs to go play one more year on kind of a show me situation. That could potentially benefit everybody. If he goes out there and balls out, that's great news for the Rams in 2024. That's also great news for Ernest Jones in 2025 and beyond, that he can go out there and have a great season. If he has hard feelings, I get it. I get why you would feel that way. And then maybe you want to take your skill set and go see what else is out there. I get it. That's the best scenario for both teams. He is a pro. No one is questioning that he's going to, shut it down or anything like that. That's really good news. But I also agree with what you said that, look, I have a theory. I happen to think that it's right. There are 4 guys you pay on a football team. You pay the guy that throws it. It's the quarterback. You pay the guy that protects the guy who throws it. That's the left tackle. You pay the guy that hits the quarterbacks so you can disrupt it. And then you pay the guy that covers the other guy's best wide receiver. Those are the 4 people that get paid. That's not Ernest Jones. He's none of those 4 guys. And I get why the Rams are saying, yeah, we'll see. They're going to have guys that can go get the quarterback. They may or may not have guys that can shut down the number 1 wide receiver. We'll see what Tre'Davious White and Darius Williams are able to do. We'll see what that looks like. But if they have to live with something in the middle of the field that's less than ideal, I should say, I think they might give it a shot. I just don't think that it's when you're ranking these priorities of where you level your defense, unfortunately. And I like Ernest Jones. I think he's a really good player. I think he's played hard. He's been a good leader. He's a tough guy, all that stuff. But I don't know if that's the spot that you spend your money in this league.
I think on paper, if you're constructing a roster from scratch, 100% I agree with you. Those are the players you invest in, especially in the NFL in 2024. Modern roster construction absolutely favors that type of roster build. But I also think in this situation, you have to pay the players that are the best players you have access to, that are also linked to this championship window. And what it means for Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford is in his first year in his 20s. Says, okay, fine, let Ernest Jones walk. You have a lot of years to win with Matthew Stafford. But I think in this situation, it'd be tough. And I see in the comments after yesterday's show, D-Mac, in 2001, the Rams didn't sign London Fletcher. He went to the Bills. He finished his career with Washington, and it was very detrimental to this team. Yeah, I mean, look, there are Rams fans that still have PTSD from that. And I think when you look at Alec Ogletree, when they let him go, that made a lot of sense just because the defensive schemes were changing from a 4-3 to a 3-4. So it was a little more understandable. This doesn't make sense to me in any way, shape, or form because you plug him in, and he was already one of the best blitzing linebackers last year. Is basically a top 5 to 7 linebacker at his position, had an 82 PFF grade, 82.1 PFF grade. So I think what this comes down to is, look, you look at Tremaine Edmonds, the deal he signed with the Bears, 4 years, $72 million. I don't know if Jones's camp is going to Leslie and the Rams saying, we want that deal. And they're saying, we want something closer to the $36 million deal that Logan Wilson signed. I think they're so far off from a contractual standpoint that, yeah, I just hope that they don't trade him. I think that would be disastrous to this year's defense. But coming up next,
it wouldn't be great, Doug, but real quick, I just, the Rams don't do drama, man. You're really taking a big swing if you think that you're going to put them in an uncomfortable position. They don't do that. If and I get it, he wants his money, and maybe he'll get it, maybe he'll get it somewhere else, but you are picking the wrong team if you think you're going to win a staring contest with these guys. They don't lose those. You can't pay everybody. They don't do drama. And I would not be surprised if they say, this is what it is. We can't find a trade partner. Ball's in your court. See what you can do from here. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I do trust the Rams in this situation. I do trust Les Snead and Sean McVay. Having said that, though, I do think that deep down inside, they realize that the best version of the 2024 Rams includes Ernest Jones.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Well, at best, when you get a 4th round pick for him, right? Yeah. I mean, that's my big issue there. So, but the Rams, you're right. No drama. It's worked for them. It's led to a Super Bowl. It's led to success every single year outside of one. And that year was a injury plague offensive line. So absolutely. But we're going to talk more offensive line, more injuries. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. Why not, right? It's America's #1 sports book, so why wouldn't we be talking about FanDuel? But this is a little bit different. Sometimes we're talking about the odds for your team, the odds for our team, some of the different sports. You can get down to NFL, Major League Baseball, playoffs, all of that stuff. This is a little different because right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and you get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That is a huge deal. That is a game changer. If you have never had the Sunday Ticket, you don't know what you're missing. It is amazing. With a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. And I know here we love to watch the Rams. We talk about the Rams, but there is something incredibly satisfying about flipping around and watching every out-of-market game. So check it out. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just a $5 bet, and you get a 3-week free trial of the NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook, and you can start going having a great time with all the games, all the players, all the sports with FanDuel.
And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. Join that 5 episodes per week club. You just watch and listen to an episode Monday through Friday, and then you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. All right, Travis. In the second segment, more news that definitely isn't great, and that is about Rob Havenstein. So Rob Havenstein, the longest tenured Rams, he's been out since August 1st, dealing with an ankle injury. Sean McVay said after practice yesterday, it's possible that Havenstein won't be available in Week 1 when the Rams take on the Detroit Lions on the road, Sunday night primetime. And if Havenstein has to miss that game, the Rams would be out their 2 starting tackles. Allard Jackson missing the first 2 games with suspension, Havenstein with an injury. So that definitely is the negative side. The positive side is that he's not going to have to go on the injured reserve where he's going to have to miss 4 games. So they definitely need to get this offensive line healthy and up and running.
Aiden Hutchinson.
Oh, yeah.
Aiden Hutchinson on Sunday night, Week 1. You have both of your tackles gone? Okay. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. That's bad. That's really bad. Aiden Hutchinson is a very serious NFL football player who can get to the quarterback with both of the starting left tackles available. And now you got both of these guys out. Okay. I mean, this is really difficult news. This was news that when he went down, like you mentioned, the very beginning of August, it seemed like, oh, this is precautionary. He's going to come back. It's not. Well, here we are nearly a month later, and now we're getting word that he may miss the opening of the season. That has me more than just, oh, okay, I know he's not going on IR. That's good news. That would have meant an automatic 4 games at the beginning of the season. That is good news. But you've got the Detroit Lions coming right out of the chute with a guy that gets after the quarterback about as well as anybody in the league. And the other guy on the other side is down too because of a suspension. So this is a major. And oh, by the way, you don't have a backup quarterback for the first 2 weeks. You don't have somebody that, in the event that Matthew Stafford does take a shot or does get knocked out of the game, knocking on wood that doesn't happen. This is how these weird things start to stack on top of each other. It's like any one of these things isn't a big deal, but when one leads to the next, to the next, to the next thing you know, Stetson Bennett's out there playing quarterback, and you got a real problem. So I'm glad he's not going on the IR. I know Rob Havenstein's a tough guy. I would imagine that this is obviously something that's given him some trouble if you can't go in week 1. But if you were playing, somebody other than the Lions, maybe this is like, okay, we can see what we can come up with. But this is not the team and not the guy that you want to be missing both of your tackles.
Absolutely. And that's week 1. Matthew Stafford, he's been, obviously, you want to keep him 100% healthy. That's definitely not the way you want to start the season, missing those 2 key pieces. And I think at that point, you probably go A.J. Curry to right tackle, Boom to left tackle. And in those situations, you got inexperience and another guy that has dealt with injuries throughout his career. He struggled to stay 100% healthy. But hopefully, like you said, this is nothing major. But it just kind of traces back to, look, the offensive line, that was the big ticket item in the offseason. And we've had injuries to Jonah Jackson. And the good news on Jonah Jackson, back at practice, McVay said he's most likely to be ready for week 1. That was their big offseason acquisition. Kevin Dotson is fine. Steve Avila is fine. But just altogether, you want to see this group just, it feels like, I'm not saying they're behind or anything like that, but when you don't get the experience through training camp, and we know that's one of the biggest keys, is building that chemistry and that cohesion with this group. You definitely don't want to have to force them to build that during the season and maybe have a couple rough spots there at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, look, it's football. Guys get hurt. Guys miss time. You got to find a way to deal with it. That nobody cares, right? This is the most brutal, relentless, ruthless league that you're going to find. Guys go down in the middle of practice, and the whole mantra is, all right, move the drill up 10 yards while they drag this guy off the field. I get it. It's a tough business. You can deal with one guy being down. But now we're down to 2 guys at the ends, and that's a big problem. The middle, like you said, with Jonah Jackson coming back, expected to play for the middle of the year, that's really good news. Sean McVay is a really smart guy. He's a really innovative guy. He's going to find a way to run the ball, to get the ball out quickly. But what makes Stafford is the ability to hold onto the balls, the ability to make a decision, to wait for that extra half a second and deliver the football. When both of your tackles are gone, that's a challenge. And I'm really trying to stay positive here, but I keep going back to what happened in 2022 when all of a sudden your guys are now, 2023, I should say, that your guys are down. Or 2022, I had it right the first time. That one guy going down, okay. Second guy, okay, what's going on? And now all of a sudden it's 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th guys going down. And there is no recovering from that. So you've already tested your depth a great deal before you've even played a game. And like you said, D-Mac, that cohesiveness, that group where all 5 pieces work together and understand how the other 4 pieces are going to work at any given time, that's something that they really haven't had a ton of time to work on in camp. And now they're going to have to work on it during the season. And that presents its own, set of challenges.
100%. Now, on the positive side, Puka Nacua, who suffered that knee injury in the Rams joint practice with the Chargers in early August. It was just minor, nothing serious. He was back at practice, wasn't a full participant, but he's back at practice, and Sean McVay said that he expects him to be ready for week 1. Yeah. Ronnie Rivers was out of practice because he was sick, and Darius Williams, they're at practice as well. So Puka, Jonah Jackson, Darius Williams, they're going to be good to go for week 1. Stetson Bennett was not at practice. He was dealing with a family issue. He'll be back at practice on Wednesday. So, yeah, I mean, look, we can get as deep into football as we want, but kind of me just right now, just like, what's the vibe check? With the Ernest Jones, with the injuries. I mean, at this point of the season, you're kind of like ready to, all right, preseason's over. You can see the start of the season. You got that excitement right now. A lot of questions being answered, and we're not used to this in Rams preseason. We're not using this in training camp. Yes, you're used to seeing guys held out, so you're seeing guys in T-shirts and shorts during preseason games, but lots of a little bit of internal conflict, it feels like. So you just kind of wonder how everyone's handling this.
I like how you put it. The vibes check. If you're just doing it right, it's like mid, right? I mean, I'm sure that they're excited for the start of the season, and I guess your most important guys are healthy and ready to go, namely Stafford, Kupp, Nakua, Kyren, those sorts of guys. That's all really good news. But like you said, this is not just one injury or two, and you got multiple suspensions. You've got your arguably most important player on defense asking or not asking for a trade, depending on how you want to parse that. You're missing both of your tackles. Your backup quarterback, who you probably don't want to be your backup quarterback, isn't at practice to start the week to get ready to go play. I mean, there's a lot going on right now that would lead you to believe that the vibes aren't good. However, and I'll put this in there, Sean McVay knows what he's doing. Like, and we've said this, you've said this, I've said this, the everydayers have said this and heard us say this. In Sean McVay, we trust. This is a man that knows what he's doing. He knows how to motivate. He knows how to plan. He knows how to delegate. He knows how to do all the things that you would want to do from your head coach. So if he's there and he's got his hand on the wheel, you always feel like you got a pretty good chance because you got one of the best in the business on the sidelines.
I agree, and that's one of the million things he does as a head coach is good or bad. He can stay even keel, but things are always going to feel like they're on the up and up. He will never let things feel like there's a lot of negative energy around here. So absolutely trust Sean McVay and this organization. I think it's just a little bit of a turbulent time as far as the unfamiliar Ernest Jones situation, but it's a business and you have to go through that. Injuries are part of the game. You have to go through that. The suspensions, I mean, Alec Jackson kind of have to go through that, but the good thing is hopefully we're going to forget a lot about this stuff in the next couple of weeks. But coming up next, something to feel really, really good about. The Rams may have found the UDFA steal of the draft. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so third segment, let's feel good about something, and that is that Omar Speights, the Rams UDFA, started his college career at Oregon State, transferred to LSU. He graded out as the highest graded rookie linebacker in the preseason at 90.6. 90.6 in the preseason. Now, a couple years ago, Lance McCutcheon, it looked like he was the best preseason player of all time. His PFF was still in the 80s, the low 80s. So to be able to hit that in the 90s, yes, it's the preseason. Yes, not every single linebacker is even playing for good teams, but still something to be impressive about. And the fact that Les Snead, during the broadcast, I mean, they really showed their cards, and they showed how highly they think of Omar Speights and kind of how this links to the Ernest Jones thing is a deep storyline as well. But still, got to feel really good about finding that kind of talent that looks to be someone that could be a key contributor for your team for years to come.
So two things here. Number one, what you just said there at the beginning, or at the end, I should say, with regards to Ernest Jones, maybe one thing does have something to do with the other. You know, I know that's a really big, from a guy that has played in a Super Bowl to a guy that's a rookie coming into the league. I know that's a big, big difference, but talent is talent is talent. And if they're seeing something that they believe is transferable to the NFL, then maybe that is part of the reason why they feel comfortable at least taking the stand that they've taken so far. I think that's number one. Number two is, I'll throw a name out there, Corey Littleton. Corey Littleton was another guy that was an undrafted player that they brought in. That was like, wait a second, we got something here. And the next thing you know, Corey Littleton is starting as your middle linebacker on this team. He's starring on special teams. He's making a huge impact. And he went out and out. And again, the Rams didn't pay him. When it came time to pay him, they said, cool, thank you for everything. Enjoy the Raiders. And then he was gone, and that was the end of that. So, but this may be how they operate, that they find guys that are talented, they develop them, they coach them up, they put them in positions to succeed, and then when it's time to go get paid, they let them go get paid somewhere else. So Omar Speights certainly fits that bill. He's looked, like you said, D-Mac, he looked terrific in the preseason. Like, I think what we're looking for as Rams fans and as people that follow this team is who pops. Like, who's the guy that makes you go, whoa, who is that? And the guys that kind of popped were Jordan Whittington on offense and Omar Speights on defense. I think it was clear that those two guys just looked like NFL caliber players, even though they were playing with a bunch of guys who maybe not going to end up in the league. They look different than everybody else.
Absolutely. And I think the Rams have a really good feel for these guys. They're hot right now. I mean, they're
Yep.
riding the Puka Nacua wave from last season, the Kobe Turner wave from last season. And this year, I mean, hey, at least those guys are drafted, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
is a UDFA that
Right.
Les Snead is saying, hey, he's not just a part of the 53-man roster, he's part of the 48 as of right now.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it really tells you how they feel about him. And I think that one of the effects of this is we could be nearing the end of Christian Roseboom. We can see Reeder possibly cut because of this. And I also think that Chris Shula in year one, I mean, I don't care how easy of a transition this was and how many years you spend this organization. He's looking for his dudes, right? He's looking for his guys.
You're
And
looking
Speights
for
certainly could be that.
Oh, yeah. No, you're looking for your own guys. You're looking for the right guys for sure. Chris Shula, think about this, right? He's been in the Rams a long time. He finally gets the defensive coordinator job for the first time in his life. And it's like, oh, hey, cool. Welcome to the new job, the new role, the new position. Aaron Donald's retiring and Ernest Jones wants a trade. And by the way, we play in 11 or 12 days. Okay, cool. Well, let's go figure this out. He's got a lot on his plate. I like what I saw from the defense in the preseason. I like what I've seen from him so far. So I'm optimistic, but that's a big ask of a guy that's doing the job for the first time.
Absolutely. And definitely, I mean, if you see the instincts, you see the big hit ability. I'm excited about Omar Speights. Imagine if you could get, I mean, obviously I want to keep Ernest Jones, but after this season, imagine if you could get Ernest Jones level production from a UDFA and what that would mean as far as reallocating those resources to other areas, the positions that you mentioned, the ones that are a little more pivotal right now to winning the NFL in 2024. So yeah, give the Rams all the credit in the world. Another feather in their cap, another dime in the rough that they've identified. By the way, an Oregon State guy. I mean, Oregon State's in the West Coast Conference. Can't get over that.
I prefer
West
to think
Coast
of him,
Conference.
I prefer to think of him as an LSU guy because you're right. Oregon State guy does not fill me with confidence, but an LSU guy, let's go.
I just want to put out that in the West Coast Conference, man. Or
yeah,
you know, if the biggest L for Washington State and Oregon State was not staying in the Pac-12 and calling it the Pac-2. Like that would have been kind of fun, right? The Pac-2. The Pac-2 championship game is like you're automatically in the Pac-2 championship game if you're Oregon State.
Just play a best of 9. I think you fill in with a couple.
That'd be awesome. That'd be a first for college football,
right? That the Cougs can play Washington. The Beavers will play the Ducks. There's your 10th game. You got to find, get a Boise State and a Wyoming in there, and then play each other 9 times. Best of 9 is the conference champion.
Absolutely, and you're right though. When you think of them in the LSU jersey, it's a little different than Oregon State. Gonna do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. And for Travis Rogers, myself, see you next time. And until next time, whose house is Locked On Rams house?